The Saudi-led coalition has bombed the Defence Ministry building in the Yemeni capital, which has been occupied by Houthi rebels. In addition, the latest airstrikes targeted rebel positions in other parts of the country, killing dozens. War-torn Yemen is also plunging into a deep humanitarian crisis. The head of the International Red Cross delegation in Yemen has just returned from witnessing some of the struggles people there are going through right now. Now, he described to us just how bad the humanitarian situation is.
There's no anymore electricity in Yemen today, and the only way to get the machine functioning and the treatment to be given to the patients is through the generator. And if there is no fuel, there is no machine functioning and no proper treatment for the patient. We have a big problem of access to fuel. The only possibility to give water to people is through pumping station. And without fuel, no water is accessible. We're not able to receive and to import this very critical medicine for chronic disease. We cannot start to deliver fuel to 26 million of people or food to 26 million of people. We need political decision. We have lost 4 voluntary from the Yemeni Red Crescent. They were doing the job, trying to evacuate wounded people. This is just the reality of this kind of work, that we take all the measures to reduce the risk, but the risk remains.
Another threat for Yemen's civilians are the weapons which the Saudi-led coalition is using to fight the Houthi rebels. Well, Human Rights Watch has published evidence that internationally outlawed cluster bombs have struck Yemeni soil. The Red Cross says it's concerned about the number of civilians getting caught in the bombings.
We speak about principle of distinction, and it's very a concern for us, and we need to have a dialogue with all the parties to this conflict to ensure that they respect the civil population. When you target, for example, ammunition depot, you have to take into consideration that a lot of civilians is living around, and we have seen several times a lot of civilian casualties, and it's something we have to address. And it's what we try to do now, to address our concern to the different parties, to the coalition, to try to take this into consideration.
Washington is preparing to step up its involvement against Islamic State. US officials say hundreds of new troops will be sent to train Iraqi forces who are struggling to push back the terrorists. RT's In the Now looked into whether the White House is making a difference.
Exactly 1 year ago, ISIS took the Iraqi city of Mosul, and that's how the globe found out about the most destructive terrorist group in the world.
Iraq's Prime Minister calling for a state of emergency after hundreds of gunmen took control of strategic parts of the northern city of Mosul.
They've taken control of hospitals, police stations.
The ISIL forced the army to retreat.
Reports say gunmen have also seized a nearby oil refinery town.
Iraq Body Count has reported that the number of civilians killed in Iraq in 2014, when ISIS began its assaults there, is more than 17,000. That's 2 times the figure of 2013. And that, of course, doesn't include Syria, where civilians are dying too. Despite the U.S. leading a bombing campaign against the terrorists, ISIS has managed to seize some key areas like Ramadi in Iraq and Palmyra in Syria. And around the world, policemen still don't know what to do with this group.
We don't yet have a complete strategy. The details of that are not yet worked out.
Joining me in the Now is Saeed Arikat. He's the former UN spokesman for Iraq, with us from Washington. Saeed, were there clues that ISIS would grow into this huge monster?
Indeed. I think when they took over Mosul last year, it was all over. I mean, you could see that. It was as clear as day. The problem is that those who are fighting ISIS, at least the United States of America, did not have a strategy then. It does not have a strategy today. I mean, you know, when the President of the United States says we don't have a complete strategy, that tells me that they don't really have a strategy, that it is ad hoc, basically. It may be honest, but that doesn't mean that you are going to defeat ISIS, because he said that we're going to degrade and defeat ISIS. Obviously, neither degrading nor defeating has really taken place, Anissa, thus far. Quite the contrary. We have seen ISIS expand beyond what was even imaginable a year ago. Now they have a larger geography altogether than the whole of Syria.
Islamic State says it's also battling the Taliban for control over parts of Afghanistan. Former President Hamid Karzai told us the terrorist agenda could be orchestrated from abroad. Well, here's some of the interview that we're going to bring you in full on Thursday.
The ISIL or Daesh is not an indigenous product of Afghanistan. It is the result of events in Iraq and Syria and the result of foreign interference in those countries. If Daesh in Iraq is indigenous and has gained force out of the grievances of Iraq, of the Iraqi people, then why not? The Iraqi government surely will talk to them. If the same is the case in Syria, sure, the Syrian government will have to talk to them. But if they are a force, even in Iraq and Syria, created by an outside force, used by an outside force, then they are there for a purpose of destruction by an outside force. In that scenario, definitely one cannot talk to them.
A suicide bomber has reportedly carried out an attack at an ancient temple in Luxor in southern Egypt. So far, there's no information on the number of casualties. The area on the banks of the Nile is one of Egypt's major tourist destinations and is visited by millions of people every year. A bomb scare in Brussels put the European Commission building into lockdown ahead of a summit of world leaders. Other parts of the city were also closed as well and traffic blocked by police. European, Latin American and Caribbean heads as well. They were all set to meet there, the EU Council building, on Wednesday. Protests over free education in Chile have again descended into riots. Students in the capital faced off with police who tried to disperse them with water cannon. They've been ongoing and often violent rallies to extend free education since 2011, with the president accused of not doing enough to bring in reforms. In southeast Turkey, violence broke out after the killing of an aid organisation chief who was reportedly linked to a Kurdish Islamist party. At least 2 men died in the clashes. Violent police used tear gas to disperse the crowd. It happened 2 days after the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party won its first seats in the Turkish parliament. Selfies are here to stay, but people are getting increasingly competitive and going to dangerous lengths for the sake of the perfect snap online. Well, in Russia, that's been tackled with a survival course to highlight the risks, as Igor Piskunov reports.
The selfie phenomenon shows no sign of dying down. And to get the most likes these days, you have to play dangerous. For example, filming yourself next to an active volcano. But often this leads to trouble. Like when 22-year-old Jared Frank was kicked in the head by a conductor when he was taking a selfie near a moving train in Peru. Or this guy in Australia who thought it was a good idea to take one with a tornado rushing towards him. Or the tragic story of 17-year-old Russian Ksenia Ignatieva. She climbed onto a railway bridge, took this selfie, but then lost her balance, fell, and was electrocuted to death. Activists claim the number of people getting into accidents, including fatal ones, is on the rise, especially among the young. A public movement in St. Petersburg has proposed that a safe approach to taking selfies should be taught in schools, and local authorities are now looking at this idea. The proposal includes getting psychologists, professional photographers, and even the police involved. Psychologists would explain how taking selfies can turn into an addiction, which can become life-threatening and is not worth even 1,000 likes. Photographers would teach students how to make cool pictures without risking their lives, while police would present statistics on how often people get into trouble with the law when taking selfies.
There's no doubt having an erupting volcano, or a raging tornado, or a giant shark swimming behind you looks awesome and would make an exciting selfie. But perhaps having all those likes on social networks isn't worth your well-being in the real world. Igor Piskunov, RT, Moscow.
Up next, crosstalk weighs up the mounting problems facing Kiev's government, and I'll be back in about 30 minutes or so.